So the Prophet ﷺ, we went over the previous week that when he came to Medina, he purchased the plot from two orphans and they initiated the building of the masjid. And once it was completed, the Sahaba, many of the Sahaba, they built their homes close to the masjid. And some of them, they would literally open the door of their home, they would walk out, and they would be in Masjid Nabawi. So because they had this desire to be constantly in the masjid. So this is one of the reasons why they built their dwellings, their homes, close to the masjid. Now, there was a special place for certain people. So Ahlul Sufa, these were companions who were living in poverty. These particular Sahaba, they had no home, no shelter, no one to really look after them. So the Prophet ﷺ gave them a special place to stay. And one of the most famous Sahaba was also from Ashab al-Sufa, Abu Hurairah. He was from Ashab al-Sufa. And today, that area of Ashab al-Sufa, where they used to stay, it's there's an elevated platform there. And that elevated platform, like in the masjid, which is the Ottoman part of the masjid. So there's an elevated platform over there. So if you're facing the Qibla, it would be on your left side. So this was where Ashab al-Sufa used to say. And there's a hadith in Bukhari narrated by Abu Hurairah which tells us a little about the state of the people of Sufa. So he narrates that, by Allah, except whom none has the right to be worshipped, sometimes I used to lay asleep on the ground on my stomach because of hunger. He had hunger pangs. And sometimes I used to bind a stone over my belly because of hunger. So one day I sat, by the way, from where the Prophet ﷺ and his companions would come out. Abu Bakr came out, passed by. I asked him about a verse from the Quran. And I asked him only that he might satisfy my hunger by inviting me into his home. But he passed by and did not do so. Umar radiallahu anh passed by me and I asked him about a verse from the Quran. And I asked him only that he might satisfy my hunger, but he too passed by without doing so. Finally, Abu al-Qasim, the Prophet ﷺ, passed by me and he smiled. And because he knew, Rasulullah ﷺ knew what was in my heart and what was on my face. So he said, "Oh, Abu Hurairah." This was an endearing term that the Prophet ﷺ used for Abu Hurairah. He said, "Labbaik, O Allah's Messenger," he said to me, "Follow me." He left. So I followed him. He entered his house and I asked permission to enter. I was given permission. He found milk in a bowl and said, "Where's this milk from?" They said, "It's been presented to you by such and such man or by such and such woman," meaning it's hadiyah, because the Prophets, they were not allowed to take charity. So he said, "Oh, Abahir," I said, "Labbaik, O Prophet of Allah." He said, "Go and call the people of Sufa." Go and call the people of Sufa. So these people of Sufa were the guests of Islam. They had no families, no money, nobody that they could really depend on. So they were just, people that were living in the masjid. And whenever an object of charity was brought to the Prophet ﷺ, he would send it to them and they would not take, he himself would not take anything from it. And he would give it to the people of Sufa. And whenever any present was given to him, he used to send some for them and take some of it for himself. So charity is prohibited for the Prophet ﷺ and his family. So the order, when the Prophet ﷺ told me that, call Ashab al-Sufa, Abu Hurairah said that, oh, this made me angry because the milk was not that much. The milk was very less. So it upset me because this is very little milk, and how is it going to be enough for the people of Sufa? So I thought that, I'm more entitled to drink from that milk because I need to strengthen myself. But behold, this is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it makes sense, whether it doesn't make sense, I have to listen. So the Prophet came to order me to give that milk to them. So I wondered what will remain of that milk for me. But anyway, I could not do anything but obey Allah and His Messenger. So I went to the people of Sufa, called them. They came and asked the Prophet's permission to enter. They were admitted. They took their seats in the house. The Prophet ﷺ said, "O Abahir, labbaik, O Prophet of Allah." He said, "Take it and give it to them." So he's like, he's the host, and it was the custom that the host, they would be the last to eat and they would be the last to drink. So Abu Hurairah, all throughout this, he's thinking that, well, how much milk is going to be left for me? So anyway, he narrates that and this entire story is in Bukhari. So I took the bowl of milk, started giving it to one man who would drink his fill, return it to me. Then I would give it to another and another and another, and they would keep returning it after they had drunk to their fill. Finally, after the whole group had drunk to their fill, I reached the Prophet ﷺ, who took the bowl and put it on his hand, looked at me and smiled and said, "O Abahir," I replied, "Labbaik, O Prophet of Allah." He said, "Just you and me now. It's just you and me." And then Abu Hurairah said that, "You have said the truth, O Allah's Messenger." He said, "Sit down, drink." I sat down and drank. He said, "Drink," and I drank. He kept on telling me repeatedly, "Drink," till I said, "No, by Allah who sent you with the truth, I have no space for it in my stomach." So he drank to his fill. He said, Rasulullah said that, "Give it to me." I gave him the bowl. He praised Allah, pronounced the name of Allah, Bismillah, and he drank the remaining milk. So this was one of the mu'jizat of Rasulullah. And these mu'jizat, they're given to prophets by Allah Azza wa Jal to support their message and to strengthen the iman of the Sahaba. Now, another thing is that the Qibla at that time, the Qibla was in Medina, and when Rasulullah arrived in Medina, the Qibla initially was towards Bayt al-Maqdis. It was not towards the Kaaba. So we know the story. It comes that Rasulullah longingly, he would look to the heavens, hoping and wishing and desiring that the Qibla would change to Makkah. So for 16, 17 months after the Hijrah, the Muslims, they continued to pray towards Bayt al-Maqdis. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the revelation, قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا, that we have been seeing you turning your face to the heavens, so we will certainly assign to you a Qibla that you would like, a Qibla that you prefer. Now turn your face in the direction of Masjid al-Haram. So this is when the Qibla took place, the Qibla change took place. So due to the change in Qibla, obviously changes needed to be made to the layout of the Masjid. So the door that was to the back was now closed, and this was now the Qibla wall, and a new door was made to the new back of the Masjid. So there was some things that they needed to do, reconstruct certain things in the Masjid. Now originally the dwellings of Rasulullah were to the rear right-hand side of the Masjid at that time. But now the Qibla had changed. They were located to the front left-hand side of the Masjid, as we see today, where Rasulullah is buried. And then you have the phases of the Masjid. So the second time, so the first time the Masjid was built was when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina. The second time was actually in the 7th year of the Hijrah, after the conquest of Khaybar. Right? The Masjid had come to some disrepair, so Rasulullah ﷺ ordered it to be rebuilt. It mentions that the Masjid was approximately 100 ghaz, yards, wide and long. It was just a little bit over it. And about 46 meters by 46 meters, right, give or take. In one of the hadith books, in Tabarani, it mentions that when Rasulullah made the intention to rebuild it a second time, there was some land next to it which belonged to an Ansari. Rasulullah asked him if he wanted to sell the land for him, sell the land to him for a place in paradise. Now, due to his situation, due to his circumstances, the Ansari was unable to give the land to the Prophet ﷺ. So Uthman, radiallahu anh, basically kind of gave him a blank check, right? That whatever you want for this land, let me buy it from you. So he bought it for 10,000 dirhams at that time. 10,000 dirhams. And said to Rasulullah, the land which you wanted to purchase from the Ansari for a place in Jannah, please purchase it from me. Right? So Rasulullah purchased the land from Uthman for a place in Jannah, and that became part of the masjid. That became part of the masjid. So the first brick of the new construction, again, it was laid by Rasulullah, then by his command Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. In Musnad Ahmad, Abu Hurairah narrates that Rasulullah was also lifting bricks with the Sahaba, and Rasulullah wasn't the type of person that would deprive himself of anything virtuous. Anything that had virtue, the Prophet ﷺ was first to do it. So on one occasion, Abu Hurairah, he narrates that I was in front of him and saw that the Prophet ﷺ was carrying lots of bricks, and he was supporting them against his chest. So I thought that he was doing this due to the weight. So I said to the Prophet ﷺ, give me the bricks. So Rasulullah said, oh, Abu Hurairah, pick up some other bricks. There is no life except the life of the hereafter. La aisha illa aisha al-akhirah. There is no life except the life of the hereafter. He continued. So this was Rasulullah. Imagine he's at that time when he came to Medina, he's 53 years old. And by the time Khaybar takes place, that's, another 6 years. So he's close to 60. He's close to 60. And he's doing, work, building the masjid. This was Rasulullah. So, the third phase of Masjid Nabawi, during the time of Abu Bakr, there was no change in the masjid. Some of the pillars which had been made from date palm trees, they were replaced when they needed to be. In the time of Umar, 17th Hijri, the Prophet ﷺ, the masjid was extended from the Qibla and the western side. So the new dimensions of the masjid was 55.5 meters by 60 meters. Now, due to the dwellings of the wives of Rasulullah ﷺ being on the eastern side, these were left alone, and the masjid was not extended at that time on that side. Umar only extended the masjid, and no change in the simplicity of the masjid. Everything remained the same. The walls were still made from unbaked bricks. The pillars were still date palms, and the roof was covered with leaves, date palm leaves, and branches. Now, Masjid Nabawi phase 4. Right, phase 4. This is the time of Uthman. Masjid is extended again. Obviously, you would have to extend the masjid because Muslims continue to grow. So the unbaked bricks were replaced by stone. Now, instead of unbaked bricks, they use stone because there was affluence that came in the time of Umar radhiyallahu anhu. And the date palm trunk pillars, they were replaced by stone pillars. The roof was also replaced. The new dimensions were now 69 meters by 74 meters. These were the new dimensions. The building work, it started in the month of Rabiul Awwal, 29th year of the Hijrah, completed in the 30th year. So approximately 1 year. So it took 10 months in total to build the Masjid in the time of Uthman. Masjid Nabawi phase 5. After the passing of the mothers of the believers, all of the wives of Rasulullah had passed, the Khalifa, Walid bin Abdul Malik, right? He was from the Umayyads. Walid bin Abdul Malik. He ordered that their dwellings become part of the masjid now. This was his order, that the dwellings of the Azwaj al-Mutahharat, the blessed wives of Rasulullah, their dwellings should become part of the masjid. So upon hearing this news, this was the command of the Khalifa at that time. The people in Medina, makes sense that they got upset. So Abu Umama, Sahal ibn Hunayf, used to say that if only these dwellings were left, because, and they should be left the way they are, because so people could see how Rasulullah lived, what type of room that he had. It was like a shack. This was how they lived. This was how they lived their entire lives. The Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, Abu Bakr, Umar, even though he had been given the keys to all of the treasures on the earth from Allah, Rasulullah chose to live this way. So anyway, the new dimensions now were 93 meters by 93 meters. Now Masjid Nabawi phase 6. During the Khilafah of Muhammad al-Mahdi al-Abbasi, the masjid was further extended. This is during the Abbasid times. So in 162, after Hijrah, the Khalifa al-Mahdi went to Medina after completing Hajj. he made Ja'far ibn Sulaiman the governor of the city and ordered him to extend the masjid. This was the 6th time. So Masjid Nabawi phase 7. During the reign of Abdul Majid Uthmani. Abdul Majid Uthmani. Right. Abdul Majid Uthmani. Abdul Majid Uthmani, he was one of the Ottoman caliphs. This is the Abdul Majid Uthmani who helped Ireland during their famine. So Ireland, in the 1800s, they had a famine. There was a severe famine in Ireland. And the Queen of England, she gave a very small amount. And it was the Ottomans, right? It was the Ottomans who were initially, they had given a lot of money, but because of diplomacy, the Queen didn't want, a Muslim to give too much money. So the Sultan Abdul Majid, he matched the amount the Queen gave, and he gave the rest in food. Because at that time, Ireland, they would grow potatoes, and there was a famine because the potatoes had all died. There was some kind of disease. And to this day, the people of Ireland, they recognize this gesture of charity from the Ottoman Khilafah. To this day. To the extent that even their football teams, their soccer teams, there is one soccer team that has the crescent and moon. This is to represent the Ottoman Empire for helping them. Drogheda United, that's the name of the soccer team. So they still recognize that favor. The Masjid Nabawi phase 8, this was expanded by the Saudi authorities. And phase 9, this was in 1992 by King Fahd bin Abdul Aziz. So the masjid was now 1.7 million square feet in size. And then we have some facts about the masjid. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that he heard the Prophet saying that whatever is between my house and my pulpit is a garden from the garden of Jannah, and my pulpit is on my fountain. There is actually maps available where the major places, major events that took place during the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can actually, if you happen to go to Masjid Nabawi, you should definitely have that map so you can visit these areas where Rasulullah, some significant events took place. The Rawdah of Riyadh al-Jannah, this is covered by green carpet. Right? This is a blessed place. In Masjid Nabawi, on the front left-hand side of the masjid, is the resting place of Rasulullah and his two companions. When you go present salam, there are 3 sets of doors on the left, and there are 3 holes in the middle set of the doors. The Prophet is buried behind the first door, then Abu Bakr, and behind the second, you have Umar. Then Abu Bakr behind the second and Umar behind the third. There are others who say that all 3 are buried behind the first, the first hole. But their graves are kind of, perpendicular. Right? Rasulullah's grave, Abu Bakr, and then Umar, like that. And the Prophet ﷺ, we know he was buried in the house of Aisha, radiallahu anha. And Rasulullah is buried closest to the doors. Then it's Abu Bakr, then it's Umar. A wall was also made by Umar bin Abdul Aziz surrounding the Rawdah. That's still there, by the way, in 91 of Hijrah. According to some sources, these walls are 7 meters high, covered by a cloth nowadays. The bottom part of the wall meets the location where Fatima, radiallahu anha's house, used to be. As I said, many of the Sahaba, they built their dwellings close to the masjid because they would literally come out of their home and they would be in Masjid Nabawi. Now, the Green Dome. Masjid Nabawi is directly above. The Green Dome is directly above the resting place of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Initially, the roof of the Rawdah was covered with bricks. There was no dome. This was so that it could be distinguished from the rest of the masjid. So if someone was walking on top of the masjid, they would know where it was. So they would not, inadvertently walk over the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they put a dome over there. So a dome was built. This dome was actually built in 678 Hijrah by Mansur Qalawun. He was one of the Mamluk dynasty kings, very famous. There's a Qalawun complex in Egypt, even today, where it serves as a masjid, a madrasa, soup kitchen. Masjid in those days, it was an entire complex, right, that had pretty much everything to help the Muslims, right? It was a charitable organization. So he built the dome over the Rawdah, right? This was known as the outer dome. The dome was covered in lead to make sure that water would not get inside. And the color of the dome was also the color of red, like grayish. So in the year 881 a brick roof of the Rawda was replaced by a small inner dome. This was built by another Mamluk king by the name of Sultan Qatbai. I think that's how it's pronounced, Sultan Qatbai. The dome, it was made of black stone at the base and white stone on the top in 1253 Hijrah. So approximately 200 years ago. Sultan Mahmud Uthmani, the fourth, ordered the dome to be colored green. That's where the green comes from, right? So the dome has only been colored green for about 200 years, right, give or take. So it's repainted as and when the need arises. So this is a brief history of Masjid Nabawi from the time that the Prophet ﷺ built it all the way now. Inshallah, we'll continue next week.
You see, the Prophet and his family are not allowed to take charity.